For over 3 years, I was stuck in what I call the shame spiral. I was overtraining, under-eating, and I had no idea why my body didn't represent the amount of hard work I was putting in. I felt like I was constantly exercising, constantly training, constantly thinking about food, and my body did not reflect that. And I remember looking around the gym at other people that were training nowhere near as hard as me, or other people that were in way better shape than me, thinking, what do they know that I don't know? What am I doing wrong? I can't possibly do any more. And that was the biggest problem. I didn't know it at the time, but I was doing too much. I had no plan. I didn't know what I was meant to be seeing each day, each week. My plan was just go to the gym 5-6 times a week, do as much cardio as I could, and cut out all the foods that I demonized as bad. And then I just cross my fingers and hope for the best. But that's not a plan. That's a slow, painful road to nowhere. And every time I would hit a friction point where the goals I wanted to achieve clash with the life I want to live. Because yes, I wanted to burn fat, build muscle, get in shape, but I didn't want to do it at the expense of not being able to go out for big family dinners or holidays or weekends away without feeling like I had to track every calorie or do a ton of cardio just to stay on track. And every friction point I hit was an opportunity to wear me down, wear down my willpower, my motivation. And eventually those things disappeared. I would skip a workout, eat something I demonized as bad, and that would have a negative knock-on effect. I'd feel like I was the problem, I'd beat myself up, and I was really starting to lack confidence in myself. And that's because confidence isn't built by shouting affirmations in the mirror. It's built by saying, I'm going to do something, doing it, and seeing a result. But the same is true on the reverse. Every time you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, and you let yourself down, you lose confidence and trust not only in yourself but the process, and then it becomes harder and harder to get back on each time. Everything changed for me when my wife gave me this book by Deepak Chopra. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it was called The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, and law 4 was the law of least effort. It talked about the secret to achieving all your goals is by reducing the friction between the goals you want to achieve and the life you want to live. When you build momentum, you build consistency, you start stacking up wins, you start casting evidence that you are someone that can follow through. And then guess what? You do that long enough, you start to see results. And then when you see results, motivation and confidence appears. I had it the other way around. I thought I needed motivation, I needed to believe in myself, I needed more willpower, discipline to get started, but it was the exact opposite. I needed to reduce the friction between the goals I wanted to achieve and the life I wanted to live long enough to build momentum, consistency, and start stacking up evidence that I was someone that could follow through. So the way I did that is I scaled everything back. I figured out what was the least amount I needed to do with my nutrition and training in order to reach my goals. And then how could I slot that into my life so I could reduce that friction between the goals and the life I wanted to live. So for me, I scaled my training back from 5-6 times a week to 3 45-minute sessions a week, full body, and I just focused on getting stronger. And this was a game changer for me because I'd been trying to train 5-6 times a week before, that sticking to 3 times a week was no problem at all. If I'm awake for 100 hours in my week, I can train for 2 hours. I felt like that was just so easy for me. And guess what? I started to recover faster. I had more energy. My strength went up in the gym. I started to see results and I started to actually enjoy my workouts again. And that was such a game changer for me. In terms of cardio, I stopped doing it altogether and instead I just focused on increasing my steps, my daily activity levels. I'd much rather be playing with my son in the park than running or, on the stepper machine in the gym. And in terms of my nutrition, instead of having these rigid meal plans or telling myself what I can and cannot eat, I just focused on getting crystal clear on what my calorie number was. And then I focused on installing a couple of nutrition tools that made sticking to that calorie deficit number as easy as possible. One of them was looking at my calorie deficit number as a weekly target instead of a daily. Whereas before, I would give myself a rigid number of 1900 calories a day, and then when I went over, I had failed and that had a negative knock-on effect. Whereas this time, I added 1900 up, times 7, that was my weekly number, and then I focused on balancing that out over the week. So I had some days where I wanted more wiggle room, more calories, and then some days where I was locked in at routine where I could scale those calories back. And this worked really, really well for me because I didn't have that negative knock-on effect of falling off plan. I could just adjust my plan as I go, and that gave me a really flexible approach to my nutrition. And another tool that really worked was bunching my calories together. Whereas before, I was stretching my calories out throughout the day, and I was getting to the evening and I was hungry, and it was a pretty miserable place to be. I don't know if you've gone to bed hungry, but yeah, it sucks. So I started backloading my calories so I could condense my meals, have bigger, more satiating meals, have most of my calories at the back of the day when I had big family meals, and this worked really well for me. I could go to bed feeling full and wake up and do it all over again. So those two nutrition tools combined with reducing my training, I was getting stronger, I was recovering faster, and before I knew it, I was building momentum, consistency, and I started seeing results. And this was the most important thing. Motivation, confidence appeared. I couldn't believe it. I was getting way better results, doing 80% less than I was doing before. And the best part wasn't even the abs. It wasn't even getting in the shape that I'd wanted to get in for so long. The best bit was the domino effect it had on the rest of my life. I remember walking past the mirror and looking at myself and feeling a real sense of achievement, of being completely proud of what I'd achieved. That confidence that comes from saying you're going to do something, doing it, and seeing a result. And then I went upstairs and everyone was like, why are you in such a good mood? I was like, I don't know. I feel great. And I didn't realize, but before, it was having the exact opposite effect. I'd look at myself in the mirror, I'd get frustrated. Maybe I just wouldn't feel great about myself, and that would spill into bad moods. And I'd go, to my wife and my son, and they'd be like, why are you grumpy? And I was like, I don't know why I'm grumpy. And it's because it was a reminder that I was a failure. I couldn't follow through. And that was one of my deepest fears. I had no idea how I was going to show up for my family and inspire my kids and be a leader if I didn't have any confidence or trust in myself. So this was a massive moment for me. So if you're stuck in that loop of overtraining and under eating, it's important to know that you're not the problem. And the answer is not more. It's never more. In fact, it's focusing on doing less, but doing less better.